Hi, and welcome once again to What's the Damage? Companion show to the incredibly well-known and popular real play D&D show, Roll for Damage. Unlike Daft Punk, we're gonna last forever, guys. I'm sad about that. I am generally sad about that. So last week, due to accidentally falling through a portal into a frozen nightmare dimension, I wasn't here. I know you all might not have noticed since Serenity did such an impeccable impression of me, but don't be fooled. She's a shapeshifter and a liar, and I'm the one true truth. Anyway, our heroes had some more fun cave adventures and finally got what they came for, but not before getting an unexpected visit from the hot Molgoth they met in the desert, who used their dark Molgoth powers to horrifically mutate a couple of poor innocent drow. Yeek. Yeah. Anyway, so there was some giant fighting, there was some mining, there was leaving the mines. Folks did some shopping, Campion did some multitasking, and we're going to be doing some chatting starting right now. As always, stick around after the stream for links and resources. I'm your host, Truth Venson, and this is What's the Damage? Welcome back. Join me today. I have two wonderful guests. We've got Serenity, our favorite DM, and we've got Tick, aka Tickle, aka other stuff, aka Sinric, our favorite barbarian. Jay was supposed to be here, but unfortunately, in order to escape that icy hell dimension, I did have to make a little sacrifice. So he'll probably be here next week.
Maybe.
Maybe. Let's see if he escapes too. Okay, so first
His
question,
soul might be
guys.
trapped like Dawkins.
Right?
Someone cast maze
It's really
on him.
poetic. Poetic and tragic.
Like character, like player.
Right? Art imitates reality. So first question, did you guys miss me?
Yes, God, yes.
I'm going to say yes, but I wasn't here last week.
I like being in the background and not having to worry about running a show. I already have to run one show.
Yeah, Serenity likes doing the little commentary in the back that we laugh at. When we laugh at nothing during the show, that's Serenity making little comments from the peanut gallery. Wonderful. Okay, so we do have some ground to cover because I wasn't here last week to ask you guys all pointed questions. So we had some cave paranoia, we had some mining, we had some glowy crystals, we had some shopping, we had some giant drow. So what's the damage?
I mean, giant drow. That speaks volumes. I mean, were they still drow at that point? They were kind of like, perversions.
Drow-esque. Undrow.
At some point.
I like that.
Undrow, yeah.
I mean, I just feel really bad for them because, I mean, wrong place, wrong time for them.
You guys screwed them. God,
yeah.
Terrible people.
I mean, like I said, me as a person just feel horrible for that, but...
As you should. As you should.
Oh, yeah, they're just wandering around in their cave doing their cave business. if they said what they were doing there, I forget. Cool beans. So, Tick, I did want to talk to you about something that happened not last game, but the game before last, I think.
Oh,
If
let's
you
play
were
test my memory.
right. It was during like the was it the game before last and the game before last? Some point within the last three games, Sinric started trying to bond, it seemed like, with some of his teammates, which was cute. It was during a watch. I don't remember exactly what you're talking about. Something about dreams, maybe?
Oh, the conversation with Perry.
Yeah, with Perry. So I kind of just wanted to ask, like, what prompted Sinric or what inspired him to start trying to get closer to his teammates now?
Um, well, I mean, just to throw it out there, I'm kind of working on those like kind of carving those rocks and everything as like tokens for characters, and I didn't really know much about Perry as far as what represents her, so I decided just to ask.
Interesting.
So it was like kind of sort of one of those, I don't want to say necessities, but not so forward, if that makes
Well,
sense.
that does make sense. So like, what do these rocks mean exactly to Sinric? Like, why is this a project that he
So
is undertaking?
I mean, it's one of those where what I'm thinking is basically as a symbol, as a reminder of what we're going against, in hopes of bringing us together as a group, as uniting like even more as a common goal. Like, hey, if we don't do this, if we fail at this is what awaits us.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the intention that I have behind that action.
It's how they morph into Power Rangers.
Exactly. It's the new morphers.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and what fates do await you guys? So I'm not sure if we checked in with Sinric recently. I may have asked this question to you before, but I don't precisely remember. Um, so you guys are all marked. We saw Campion sort of realizing for the first time how badly he personally was marked by Tharzun by interacting with the party and kind of going along with their stuff. Have I asked you about Sinric's general attitude towards being um, cursed, kind of? And has it changed recently with like the advent of babies and voices in your head that are mutating your enemies, making them more dangerous? Like this is getting a little bit real and a little bit eldritch.
I mean, it is, and to be honest, it's something that, in character I haven't spoken to anyone about, but I mean, it's one of those things where he doesn't really feel close, but at least, the conversation with Perry is kind of provided that first step. So, I mean, the
Mhm.
conversations will start to open, and, keeping all that stuff bottled up eventually starts to, come up on people.
Yeah, you can't depend too much on your little hip flask. I mean, you
I mean,
can, but
and that's kind of the direction that I'm going is, I mean, you can't always rely on yourself, and you can't always keep things together. And like I said, eventually that comes to a head internally.
mhm. Yes, it does. Well, glad Cinder's making friends. So I wanted to talk to you guys. Oh, I wish Jay was here. I wanted to talk to you guys about some of the stuff that I saw happening like throughout your beautiful, wonderful little cave vacation, which was the advent of trying to vote to make decisions, which I think the party had not really implemented that much previously. Was this a thing that you guys talked about out of character at all, or was it something that's happened spontaneously in character?
I, I mean, I don't really
You don't know.
know how to answer that. I mean, um, me personally, outside of character, I really don't talk that much with the
Mhm.
people in reference to the game or anything. Because I have a problem with trying to get too into those conversations. So it's easier for me just to take a full stance away from it. Then that way, it just let the game be the game. I mean, I know
something we
that
touched
doesn't.
on last episode too. I think last
I have a
episode
question for you, Truth. How much PTSD
Yeah.
did you get from watching them go through the caves?
It was actually kind of cathartic.
How did you feel watching them go in like every wrong direction?
Oh my God, less cathartic. I think it wasn't so much they were going in wrong directions, it's that they were standing
No, they
in
were
one
finding
place.
they were finding lots of stuff like
They're
that.
finding stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
For context, this has been mentioned on stream before, but in Serenity's game, which we were all playing in, except for Tick, we got stuck in a cave for 2 weeks. And it was real fun.
I mean, sometimes it happens.
Sometimes it happens. Honestly,
much less than 2 weeks this time. Much less.
Much less than 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Was it like a day and a bit?
Yeah, it was literally like just
2 days.
No, it was one day. I don't think you didn't even long rest in there. Yeah.
We just short rested. Yep. I mean,
right.
And that's where that whole like concept of analysis paralysis kind of gets us, because we want to see everything, we want to do everything, but sometimes you just like can't think of a way to proceed, and sometimes a wall is just a wall.
That's true.
Sometimes it's a wall with a snake in it.
Yeah, so I mean, it's one of those where we got to pick our battles, and unfortunately we picked our battle on a wall that seems to be just a wall instead of a wall with a snake on it.
Snake wall, who knows? That's actually kind of what I thought the introduction of the voting system was there to cure, or that was the impression that I got. Obviously, you aren't talking about this with the other players, but do you think it's working? Is it improving this analysis paralysis?
We were quicker to make a decision, so I mean, for what it's worth, I think it might be a good thing. Especially, I mean, the only problem, let's see, 1, 2, I mean, we're a group of, so I mean, voting might have a problem eventually.
Last 2 can just fight it out. It's fine.
We'll have a fight to the death.
Rochambeau. Yeah.
It's an exciting way to do it on stream. Wonderful. Okay, so at one point, I'm sorry, I prepped a lot of questions for people who are not here. So at one point during the wandering inside the cave, and I think this was actually shortly before you guys found what you were looking for, there were a couple of voices advocating for kind of just leaving, or it seemed that way at least. What was, like, I don't think Sandrock really chimed in that conversation that much, but like, what was his process?
I think I do recall saying that, you know, it might be better, you know, to actually just kind of walk away from it. I think I do recall saying that, but I'm not 100% sure. If I didn't say it, I was definitely thinking it as me as a character, because I mean, it's one of those things where we kept running into dead ends, and eventually you're going to get to a point where one of those dead ends isn't going to be a dead end. And then what are you going to do when, you know, people have exhausted everything trying to figure everything else out? So, I mean, it's one of those, maybe to survive and not complete a side quest, or die trying to complete it. And I guess that's kind of like the intent on some of those like dungeon crawl-esque type deal. You know, sometimes that room looks appealing, but you only got 2 spells left, and, you know, we still haven't found what we're looking for. So as far as my management of resources, sometimes it's easier to walk away, especially when it's something that wasn't needed.
Yeah, because it was a favor to someone you didn't really know that well, and possibly an opportunity for profit.
And like, you know, it's one of those where I think behind the scenes during, you know, everything, I might have said this, like if it was, you know, like say someone was in the cave that needed, you know, help, like they were kidnapped or something, my character motivation probably would have been a little bit more press on. But I mean, we're literally going to collect an ore for 1,000 gold. You know, it's something that 1,000 gold is nice, but that's not end all be all in the scope of things.
Yeah, so you mentioned that this was a side quest, essentially. And Serenity, I wanted to ask you, so oftentimes in this game, side quests don't go exactly the way you think they will. For instance, with the Flump recently. So did this one go more or less how you planned it, or were there any major deviations that you had to
Well,
compensate for, or no?
so when I initially created this, I was just gonna have like once they get to the entrance, they just like have a straight shot, and then I was like, well, that's not really realistic. Like these mountains obviously have things like living in them. So I kind of branched things out a little bit. And initially I was just going by the seat of my pants because I was like, I just decided that in the moment. I was like, this has to be more than just you get there, you find what you need, and like everything is done. Um, and so I created that like second like fork in the path. And then when I had more time, I added things in that I was like, this could be a thing. And this could be something that comes up maybe later, depending on how they do it, if they make it through, if they don't make it through, like depending on what they do. Um, and to me, it made it feel more real that these mountains are home to many different things that they don't understand and that they don't know. But I think all in all, it actually went better than I had planned. When they had spent a lot of resources on getting across the chasm and then going through that hallway and not really finding out the true crux of like what that all was, and then they decided to continue. I was really worried because the that was supposed to be a very like very difficult and deadly encounter. Thankfully, I rolled real poorly for them, so like no one went down in the battle.
Yeah, the damage was no joke.
Yeah, it was a lot of damage. I think I like missed like 4 or 5 times with creatures who had like multi attacks. Um, so like it ended up turning out really well for them. They ended up having a tough battle, but it ended up being like really positive, and they actually used their resources that they did have left quite well. So that actually felt really good because there were plenty of times where I've like when I did the previous one with you guys, where I've done side quests and I'm like, wow, this is going really poorly. Like this was supposed to be fun. And eventually it was when you got to the end and met the beholder and everything like that. But like there are some points where as a DM you're like, shit, what did I do? Like I fucked this up. This was supposed to just be like a fun and side quest that maybe foreshadowed something later on or showed some piece of lore in the world. Yeah, no, this one I think went quite well, so I'm actually quite happy.
Awesome. Yeah, so talk to me a little bit about the fight with the giant mutated drow. And at what point did you decide to feature the champion Dune, I think is what we're calling them at this
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
So I was never actually intentionally going to have them be a part of it. I always knew that there was going to be this happening in the caverns because I want the characters to have this understanding of like it doesn't matter where they are or when they are or what they're doing, like this thing is following them, like this thing that's marked them is with them no matter what they do, even if they're doing the most mundane thing. It could crop up on them and be something completely different and terrorizing and harrowing. But then I just got this idea of I remember like how Jay was playing Campion, and Campion was still very much like, I'm not a part of this. Like this is you guys. Like I am just and I think his character had not realized, Campion as a person had not realized, like when he was asked, you know, when he was told you do not need to go into these ruins, like you can stay out. Like if you stay out, there like you're probably in a better place. And he said, no, I'm going in. Like that was the moment, and I think it didn't dawn on him as a player or a character that that's what happened to him, and so he's constantly been being like, all this shit's fucked up. I don't understand it. I don't know why. Like what's wrong with you people? And I wanted to have that be very apparent that it's not you people. It's like you're included, Campion. You're part of this now. You got to stick with this. You got to see it through because you're stuck. And so I figured having that being be there, and also I want them to have this like overarching foreboding presence. Like these characters, these people don't understand what this thing is. They assume it's, you know, a harbinger Tharizdun, but what does that mean? Like, what does this mark mean? What does this power over us mean? Why are the gods interested in us? Like, why did we have to go to Avonhurst? And I wanted to tie that all together, and I think that moment kind of helped solidify sort of some of these ideas to help the players start piecing things together.
That reaction that Campion had was priceless, I will say.
Oh, he was like shitting his pants.
Epiphany moment.
Yeah. He was shitting his pants at first. He's like, we gotta go. And then when I had him make the intelligence check and piece it together, I think Jay realized, oh, okay, I'm not just a part of this party because they've got a new character, and it's like, no, you're a part of this group.
It's like everyone who stumbles in there just kind of like, well.
And it's quite interesting for Campion because he did not go to Avonhurst. He does not have he's not had the same interactions as, say, like Oriana or even Perry or Quinn or even Sinric and Baltaim. So he's kind of in the dark about all of this.
It's interesting. Okay, so let's talk a bit about the actual battle with those mutated giant drow things. So was that one of the things that you just like made up when you were expanding the mines, or was that something planned earlier on?
Oh, that was when I made this side quest, I knew that those were going to be the end battle of the mine. I just was like, well, what would make sense being inside like this dark cavernous area? Like, what would live here beyond weird creatures, giants, and like the beasts that they've seen on the outside? And I was like, okay, well, there would be drow, like live in and have societies potentially in these places, or maybe outside on the mountain somewhere, like they don't know. But I was like, okay, this makes sense. And then I wanted there to be like the opportunity to interact with these creatures to see if the party would insta attack them, would try to entreat with them, would have a conversation, and then realize what was going on. And I don't like, I think they've seen a transformation once before, which is at the very, very beginning of the game with Logan. But at that point, they hadn't, it was the first time. They were still trying to grasp like what was going on and everything like that. And that wasn't because of them. That was because of something else. I think now they're realizing like they're carrying with them this thing. And it can happen at any time and to any person. What does that mean?
The dread. Can I get the player's perspective too, Tick, of this like battle, and also watching this transformation, because the party did choose to try and interact with these drow, to have a conversation with them, and then all of a sudden they were just turning into giant monsters. Pretty harrowing, I would think.
I mean, it was definitely a moment of suck, but I mean, it's one of those where, yeah, I mean, I'll process it once we're out of the cave. But that's, and I could be wrong on this, but I was looking at someone that may have been trained for battle as, okay, this situation is in front of us, let's deal with it, suppress everything, and then deal with it later.
That makes sense.
And that's kind of, keeps going back into how I play the characters. You suppress everything, you keep it down, and eventually that stuff's going to boil up and, come to the front anyway. But I mean, as far as the battle, I think I cracked myself when I went to like 13 health or something like that in rage from like full. Well, I don't think it was full, but I think I was like 10
Close,
HP off. Yeah.
And I think it makes sense for Sinric too, given what his backstory and what he's been through and everything like that. I would see that he would be one of the lesser characters to kind of like lose it in that situation, but have to process it later and try to understand it.
And like I said, I mean, that's kind of the route I'm going for, is to have that emotional detachment, and then eventually that'll come back and, into play. Yeah. I mean, that's the plan I'm trying.
At the most unopportune time, I'm sure. But that's the impression I've gotten from Cynic too. He's been mostly calm about just about everything. Very
It-
It's
professional.
funny that the
it's
character that goes into a rage is mostly calm.
well,
Good call,
I'm
Rage.
treating rage as a mechanic.
No,
and,
I
mean,
think I think it's very, very interesting that the one character that has this ability is actually the most stalwart of the group.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, and that was even
But
when
a
I
different
created
take.
when I created the character, it's like, okay, I don't want to be something traditional like barbarian-esque and, be angry and smashy at
Mhm.
everything. But I mean, it's one of those where I'm literally just treating rage as a
I love it.
mechanic. And
It's made
yeah.
things so easy for me for story.
Oh yeah, I mean, it'll be great once all those emotions
Just
start
you
flooding them.
wait. Just you wait.
And I mean, you've already been starting with stuff like that. I mean, there's already
Mhm.
stuff in my head, and it's like, oh crap, I don't want to deal with this.
Oh, but you're gonna have to.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're all very excited. So these giant drow monsters, were these fully homebrewed monsters, or did you start off a base, or?
No, they actually are. I don't know where they're from, but they are literally. You can get them now. I don't know which book they're in, but they are from either a module or or one of the like books that has like creatures in it, like new monsters in it. So it's not homebrewed. It's from one of the supplements. I have all of them on D&D Beyond, so I couldn't tell you exactly which one they come from. But yeah, they were just something I found like randomly spinning through stuff. I often like determine like, do I want this to be homebrewed or do I want this to be something that I find easily? And generally, I more so homebrew the stuff that's like less side questy, like because to try and tell my story and the story of the world, I generally have to like shim things in because like the vision of the world that I've created is different than like say Forgotten Realms and like the traditionality of like what is it, Toril is the word, the world, I think. But like when it comes to side quests, it's often much easier to just like take creatures that are already
Mhm.
created and use them in that way. So yeah, they were actually not homebrewed. But
Oh, awesome.
I mean,
creatures, yeah.
you could even take those creatures and just like reskin it to something else. I mean, it doesn't even have to be like in the same category as what you're looking
Yeah,
for.
I think I changed their appearance and like what they actually were, and just used the template of what's called a mutated drow. Like I think in the books, they're actually like just like they've just been giantized basically, and they speak. They're not in unintelligent or anything like
Mhm.
that. Like in this, they had become like a
Monstrous.
goop of what they originally were. But in the actual, I think they look like drow, just like giant fucking drow. So
Yeah.
this was a little bit different. So I did
Neat.
skin them differently.
I mean, I equate it to what we're seeing. There was a movie a while ago where, a bunch of like people went to a circus and got mutated by this like crazy mad scientist, and they turned like the people into these giant like weird versions of themselves that had like misshapen eyes and like skin melting in places. And
Yeah, I just tried to think of it as like traditional body horror. If you watch like any kind of body horror movie, like just imagine any one of those scenes, and like that's what happened with these people.
I did like the transformation scene, though. You could almost hear like the bones crunching,
Cracking,
like the sound of cartilage going.
Yep,
Yeah,
that's exactly
gross.
what I wanted.
It's grotesque.
Disgusting.
Yeah.
Gory.
It fits the theme of the campaign so far.
Good.
Grotesque and weird.
Good.
Serenity's like, oh my gosh, it has been a horror campaign this whole time.
I think, we're just kind of like getting into that aspect, though, I think, as far as the story, or as far as like
it's gonna get weirder.
Really understanding that, I guess, is the concept.
It's gonna get weirder.
Yeah, most campaigns do have like elements of things that are scary, though.
Yeah, generally, like there. Well, I mean, there should be moments of like, oh shit.
Yeah.
But I definitely wanted this to have like there are so many things in my background of like things that I enjoyed when I was younger and stuff like that I don't generally get into as much today. Like I don't generally watch a lot of like body horror movies and stuff like that anymore. Horror used to be my favorite genre. But it's fun to like think of how you want to describe things and give that descriptor to people and see how well you can actually create your own element of horror in a game. And I think I'm having fun with that, and like using all of the stuff that I've read or experienced as I was younger up until like today, up till my present, and bring that into this tale. So I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Awesome. It's been very fun to watch. Okay, and with that, I think we're going to move on for our topic for today, and the topic is beach episodes. So in D&D, beach episodes, obviously it's usually not a real beach. This usually takes the form of like a festival or a carnival or a bathhouse. But essentially a session where the plot takes a little bit of a break or takes a backseat to the character just kind of doing lighthearted stuff that's fun. So first off, my broadest question is, what's your opinion on like planned downtime for a session for D&D games? Are these kind of sessions fun? Are they boring? Are they either, depending on how they're run?
I think they can be either, but I'm of the mindset that I think there are required in a longer campaign because it gives players and characters a chance to decompress and have fun without the fear of dying every episode. So, and that does go a long way as far as like character growth. And a lot of your character bonding moments can happen over stuff like that as well.
Yeah, I think it depends on your group. If you have a very like dungeon delvy, constantly want to be in the thick of things group, it's probably not something that they would enjoy. But I think in a group who enjoys like our role playing their character moments and really digging into like who their characters are and their personalities, and facets of them, I think like those like fun nothing episodes, whether it be just shopping or like you said, like a bathhouse or going to the beach or having fun at a festival, offer those moments where characters can discover things outside of, oh, you're a bard and you cast spells, and like I didn't know you could cast a spell, versus like I didn't even know you enjoyed this random thing that likely doesn't have anything to do with like the main story, but it's just a cool facet of a character that you learn when you get to know another person, that don't necessarily get to be shown in the general thick of things when you're running from quest to quest or trying to save the world or whatnot. So I think they're great. I try to have them every once in a while. The thing that I don't generally do, what a lot of like DMs do, I find it hard to find like breaks in my campaigns because I generally have like a very flowy set of arcs for my campaign. I find it hard to find like those downtimes where they'll just be like, guys, you have like a month of downtime. What would your characters do? Like get that ready for like next week and tell me what your characters would have been doing within this month. Or you have like 2 weeks, or you have a year. I generally have a hard time doing that because I have a plan of like how each arc is going to flow into the next one. And I know some DMs specifically have like an arc end and then another one happen like, months later. The characters are together in a, almost like starting anew again, but they're a cohesive group and like something blows up and they have to solve it. So I generally don't do that, but I will give episodes here or there where characters can kind of have a little bit more fun.
And I can see story beads for doing something like that, like visually ending an arc and, characters going on their own and then starting like the next episode. It's like, oh crap, this is happening. Wait, I know the person that I can talk to. And I mean, you kind of have that downtime for character bringing into the story. But yeah, it's hard to plan like long downtime. And that's, like it's weird because like, even if you want to say, learn a skill or something like that, you kind of need those prolonged downtime. But it's one of those, and I'm guilty of this. I don't like trying to learn like new skills, learn new languages or stuff like that in D&D because it takes so much time as far as like downtime, and it's something that you really just don't get a whole lot of.
I recognize that, and I know like a lot of people like look forward to that. Thankfully, I think like the group that we have, I've explained like I generally don't do that, and the players are okay with that. But I have ways for them to still learn stuff, or I supplement that with other stuff like later on in the campaign to make sure that they still have that epic feel of like, okay, I still gained something, whether it be through a magic item or through some other facet of role play or experience. I just do it that way because for me, I don't know, just saying like, yeah, I spent a month learning Draconic and going to a teacher every day is like, okay, well, I guess you could have, but like.
It's actually a great topic, and I'm going to write that down real quick before I forget it.
And I mean, doing stuff like that is great if it happens in the course of what you just said. So, like, I mean, hey, we have a downtime episode. What did you want to do? Okay, you spend your month doing this. Great, next person. And then we pick right back up.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. A lot of DMs will have like an end of like a specific arc, and then they'll say, next week, guys, just come back at me. You've had a month. Just tell me what your characters have been doing for that month, and we'll like go through it very quickly, and then they'll have the thing happen. I just generally like I find it hard for me to like hard kill a portion of the campaign and have the characters like sitting around for like a month or 2 months or whatever. I generally like have very specific story beats, and for me it's hard. I don't know if I'll do that this campaign or not. I have no idea. I might not.
Really with how our group interacts, I can see if something like that happens, we'll probably split up by like a day or two and everyone kind of go their own way.
Yeah, and then come back together at some point. Yeah.
If something happens that warrants us coming back together, absolutely.
Well, if it doesn't, I guess we start.
But
I guess we start a new campaign.
Though, I mean, you know what I'm saying. Because we as characters will have that expectation, or we as players will have that expectation, but we as characters, it's like in the character's perspective, it's like, okay, well, we just finished this, so.
Yeah, it really depends.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Plus, I mean, those time skips can be kind of nice in some cases because it allows characters to showcase like new skills that you picked up while you're away. So I can't say I'm not a fan, but it's one of those time and place things.
Exactly. 100%.
Mm-hmm. So you two mentioned different kinds of downtime. Serenity, you mentioned that you don't usually do like long, drawn out time skippy type stuff. Like it's not a month, it's usually like a day or something like that. Tick, as a DM, do you tend to have shorter little downtimes or those longer maybe months long downtimes?
From when I did that stuff, it was, easier just to do short downtimes. I mean, because, it's when you play a game, it's like, okay, we're going to have a fun episode today and we're going to test the waters to see if everyone likes it. And I mean, yeah, you kind of play it by your group, but me personally, I enjoy those smaller downtimes. Like you have a day here, you have a week here, what are some things you want to do in this town? I mean, do something fun or productive that you would like to do and interact with people. And you get a little bit of an RP feel with everyone and, you get character growth.
Mm-hmm. So with these downtimes, and I know there's obviously a lot of variety, do you guys as DMs usually have like little activities planned? Like there is a festival or there is an attraction around here, or do you let it be more character driven? Like what do you want to do? Just leaving it open, or both?
I think I've done both. I think because at the very beginning of this campaign, I had the festival in Avonhurst, and there was like time to do that, and then I open it up to like the players really to choose whether they want to have a more downtimey episode. Like there have been a couple of episodes where it's just been like full RP because like the characters have been shopping and then chatting with one another and getting to know one another. Then for instance, like when they were in Zarithamar, they went to that dance hall for a night just to like let loose. And like, I had to make that up. And
we tried so hard to get there. And like every single,
two characters did drugs, like, just to have some like brief levity, in the things that were happening around them. So, I think I do both. Again, I really like the shorter, like, oh, here, have a day. Because then I feel like you'll spend the session like actually role playing that day and characters enjoying themselves versus like if I say, well, what did you do for a week? It's generally like, okay, well, I did X, Y, and Z. And then you get through those things and it's like there's no role play, generally not a lot of role play that happens there. It's just more like, okay, I checked these 3 things off my list. So yeah.
And that's pretty much, I'm right there with you. The short form kind of downtime just gives you a better player experience.
Well, yeah, I do remember the festival. It seems so long ago, both in game and out of game. Out of game actually was pretty long ago. In game, maybe a month.
No, it's been
What?
like 2 months, I
It's been
think.
like 2 months. Okay,
Yeah.
Still a little
relatively.
salty on that festival for having a -4 on everything.
Oh, right,
Yeah, you
right. I
died.
forgot that was right
Uh,
after you died.
Rick died.
but it happens. The next time I won't.
Uh-huh. I
Right.
believe that
Hopefully,
festival was
maybe.
there's a foot race I remember
Yes,
vaguely
there
Yep.
in the
was.
festival. And I think that was where we had the infamous Dobby butt acid scene. I think that was that episode.
Yes, when he
Wasn't
went
it? It
well, it
was.
wasn't, I don't know if it was that episode or the episode after.
Hmm.
But that was, yeah, when he went to the merchant and was like, I get explosives from one merchant and then acid from another merchant.
He got
I mean,
neither. But it was fun.
he probably might have got the acid if he didn't mention the whole butt bit.
Yeah, he was literally, how much acid would I need to like erode a hole in a person's anus? And I was like, okay, that's like,
Too far.
had you have just been like, hey, do you have any like acid? I need it for whatever. The merchant might have been like, sure, I just don't want to know. But when you literally say, I'm going to drop it into
Hmm.
someone's drink and make sure that they burn a hole through their butt, the merchant might be a little less inclined to.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
past the point where you can say
Well,
you
it's like
didn't
aiding and
know.
abetting, right? It's like, am
Yeah,
I going to
right.
be? Are they going to come
Am I in
after me
trouble?
for selling this? Like,
At some point, you just don't have
especially in a
plausible
city of
deniability.
the creator gods, that is generally
Hmm.
a good aligned city. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, sometimes. Yeah, so it has been a while, but I did want to talk a little bit about that festival because I think that was sort of the last planned day, I think, in this.
Yeah, probably like
Unless
a
we're counting the
planned
dance hall and drugs.
downtime.
Yeah.
Yeah, the dance
Yeah.
hall was like more players done, but that was like a planned one. Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to talk about kind of what made that fun for both you and the players, since we have a player here, and also what goes into planning like a day of levity versus planning an adventure, a normal like dungeon-y type thing.
I mean, decompression,
Mhm.
what I think would be like leading right there. I mean, you just finished something traumatic. So, I mean, let's give the players and characters a chance to, take away from that for a moment and, have something fun.
Yeah, I
Maybe you
think
get a
Cynric
silly
specifically
reward.
need a break.
I
Yeah.
I honestly had that planned before Cynric had had died in that. I didn't think anyone was going to die on their way there. I was
Mm.
like, no one's going to die on their way there.
At the same
It
time,
just
it was a
worked
good
out. It really worked out that it was like, okay, this is perfect. The players are going to need this. The characters are going to need a chance to like take a breath, because things are going to ramp up and get more serious once they have to make their way up the mountain. Um, but in terms of planning it, I think it depends on what you're planning. Like the festival took quite a bit of planning because I had to plan like, okay, what are the games? I wanted to try and use games that I hadn't used in like previous campaigns. I wanted to try and think of things that I tried to think of something that each of the characters would be good at, could try their hand at, and
Mhm.
maybe win at based on like their stats and where their skills lay. And then I had to think up like, okay, what are the prizes that they're going to get if they win. And I wanted to have things that were, all the way from simple to could be really, really useful. So that takes a bit of time. But then depending on like if the players are like, we just want to go to a bathhouse and relax, that's a little bit easier to kind of like plan out, because basically you just say, yeah, sure, there's one in the city. So I think there's some that are driven by DM, like a
Mhm.
festival or some forced event that the players can choose to ignore, or like it's right in front of them and they do, because it's there. Or it's done by the players themselves where they're like, we want to go to a bar and we just want to get really fucking drunk and like slam it out all night, and that's it. And then for the DM, that's fairly easy because you just say like, yeah, sure, you find one, you get a bunch of drinks, and then the floor is open to the players, and then the players generally will RP that out themselves, and they kind
Mhm.
of have the floor to do what they want. And then you only have to step in when they're like, oh, I want to interact with X thing, and you're like, okay, sure, fine. So I think it really depends. The preparation depends on which one it is.
That makes sense. So I want to talk a little bit about, we're sticking with the festival theme for the moment,
Sure.
about what goes into designing games for a festival, because they're not battles, but they are skill checks, but they're not quite puzzles, but they are a little bit. I remember the foot race. I remember some of the games that you set up for our campaign way back when. So how do you make a game? How do you make it fun, but also a bit challenging, but also fun?
I mean,
Yeah, go ahead, Tick.
I was just going to say had that element of luck. And I mean, and that's where kind of the skill check comes in. I think the funnest game that I've ever played, and this wasn't even a game that I actually made, this was something that someone else did, but it was actually just dice. Our characters played dice in game, and we betted in, a Neverwinter tavern to make gold for a campaign. And it was just as simple as everyone had a D4, a D8, and a D10, and they publicly rolled a d20, and you had to make deception checks if you wanted to like lift up your cup to see what happens and try and change your die, and other people could perceive if you did that and stuff like that. And it was just something that gave you had the opportunity to straight face it and bet, and to play towards character strengths, but everyone was included in the same game.
It does sound
So
fun.
and it was just a silly little thing, but I mean, yeah, I think that was about the most fun. But as far as like, yeah, you got to have some type of luck in. I think that's where the skill checks kind of come in, because the dice will tell you what you do and don't do.
Yeah. Also, can I say, if you have proficiency in dice or cards, you hardly ever use them. I think there should be more opportunities to play cards and dice in game. It's my position.
It's true. I mean,
Yeah.
it depends on the game. I agree. There aren't a lot of places to use those skills. But also there aren't a lot of like times where like you're proficient. I mean, unless you're a bard, and then generally you just get asked to make a performance check. But there are a lot of like backgrounds that give you proficiency in an instrument and like never
Oh,
used.
yeah.
It's like you have proficiency in flute, and it's like when do you
Yeah.
ever make a flute check?
Like, yeah, certain druids get
Good check.
instrument proficiency as well.
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
like, why?
Yeah. Or same with like even like cartographers tools. Like
Yeah.
most of the times you get given a map. Like how many times do you make a check to like make a map, and how long does it takes a while to make an actual like decent map.
Yeah.
Like a fully detailed one. So it's like some of them are very like, but again, I don't think that I think that there are times and places for them. You just have to find them in the game or make them for yourself. But in terms of making games, yeah, for me, I often will like look around online and then see a lot, like, because again, I don't like to reinvent the wheel if I don't have to, but I look around online and then I will take an idea and either modify it or maybe just straight take it and use it in my game. There are the like the karaoke battle one was just me. I love karaoke in general, and then we had a bard in the group, and I was like, okay, we're gonna RP this out. Let's see how well you can go. But I still allowed the performance check at the end of it. But I said you gotta sing a little bit,
That is both mean and entertaining.
Poor Jake.
Hey, if I got to do all the voices and everything else, you're gonna sing.
It's only
once.
fair. Yeah,
that's right. But yeah, no, like I like I said, and then I like Tick said, it's important to have all the players feel like they can take part in at least one, if not more of them. And so it's always trying to find opportunities where at least one of the games is tailored to a stat or a specific background or something like that for a player, so that they feel like, oh, I'd be good at this. Like, I'm definitely going to sign up for this one. And then you can have those players who are just like, I'm just going to sign up for everything and see like what I do, which is fine as well. But I always like to make, because there are those players that sometimes are like more of like the wallflower and kind of doesn't want to get involved or doesn't want to bet their money, because at the beginning of the game you don't have a lot of it. And it's like, give them an opportunity to say like, hey, you might be really good at this. You have like a +7 to your check, so you might as well try it.
Now, I mean, do you mind if I have like a follow-up question for that?
No, go ahead.
How do you feel about like potentially rewarding characters that break out of what they're proficient in to try, like some of those festival games that they may not have proficiency or even good rolls in, because it creates like a learning experience or just a fun experience for
Oh,
a character?
100%. Like, I mean, whether even if it's a fun, like, crappy role that they have, but especially if they do well. I mean, obviously, you were like, hey, you reward that play and you make them feel like they did really really well. I am definitely not the type of DM that says like, oh, this wasn't a game for you, this wasn't meant for you, so therefore
Can't
like
play.
you're punished for
Yeah.
it, or like you don't deserve to win it. I mean, like I think Perry did the race, and she
Yep.
actually did better than Dobby, who had better
Yeah.
decks than her. And she ended up getting like second, and as she should have. Like she had really good ideas for how she would like get ahead, and she didn't use any of her spells or anything like that. Like she just like had some good ideas for like how she would push ahead and like use the skills that she had. So I love like rewarding like smart play like that, and seeing the atypical character do well at something.
Awesome. Um, okay, so when would you guys say is like the appropriate time to slot a downtime episode in? Because Serenity was saying like she has plot arcs to sort of flow into each other, so it's not always that easy to find a place to pause on purpose. So like how do you fit these little episodes of downtime in? Because I think Tick, you were saying they're pretty important for things like character and player decompression. So how's that fit?
I mean, it's something that you kind of it I don't really know exactly how to answer that in the way I want to,
Mhm.
but it's like, I mean, if you're playing with a group of players, you can kind of pick up when someone's not having fun or when their demeanor changes on something, or they might feel stressed out on a certain situation. So, I mean, it's one of those where it's like maybe, hey, you're walking to the shop, but you see a bathhouse, for example, and it's like, oh, well, we haven't had a bath in a week. Let's go there first. And it just kind of like forces into that moment. But whereas like a big event, I mean, yeah, like the festival happened to line up, just like we were going there anyways, and the festival was there. But yeah, I mean, unless you have some type of story beat, it's kind of hard just to like do something like that. I can see maybe have a town crier somewhere saying, hey, festival coming up in, like 3 days, and then
It's like the
finding a way
circus.
for, yeah, a group
Yeah.
to, you know, stick around for that. But I mean, I think it's more like reading the group and finding out when those things should happen, as opposed to just like planning like, hey,
So
in
more
4 sessions,
spontaneous.
I'm going to be, in this town. I
So
mean,
more
but me,
more based on players and plot.
yeah, and that's just me personally.
I think easy ways of like introducing the opportunity for that. Again, you can't force players to do anything, right? Like you can say like shiny hotel right in front of you, and the players are like, fuck that. Like we have to figure this shit out, or Tharsden's gonna awaken and we don't have time to like go into this shiny fucking hotel. Like I like that's nice, but like I don't want to do that right now. And so they can kind of completely divert themselves away from that. Um I'm actually the type of people hate me in game because I'm the type of person who's like, fuck all this frilly crap. I don't care. I want to play story. And so I often will like try and get a group to like go in the opposite direction of that stuff because I just like I'm like, really? Um, but but it's up to the players. I think the when I try and slot them in is like when they get to like a new society or a place where they're not like traveling on the road, and then I'll put something in front of them and I'll be like, "Ooh, here's this shiny thing. You're welcome to investigate it or do something with it, or you can completely ignore it. That's like on you, but I'll like put it there." Again, even a festival, like the players can decide like we want to take part, or during this festival, we actually want to do a heist on X building because there's something there, and they still want to do like the serious stuff that actually gets them further in the plot arc. So it's really dependent, but yeah, that's when I try to slot them in. Like generally in each city they go into, I'll have like something that's just like random, has nothing to do with anything, and gives them an opportunity to like discover beyond shopping, obviously. But like in Zarithamar, there was the library. They got those books. They like learned some stuff from those. There was the dance hall. Like there's all this other stuff that they could like potentially interact with that is not necessarily going to further a side quest or the plot specifically, but might open up, say, character backstory or character's understanding of the world and the lore.
I mean, that's actually a good point. I mean, because there's a lot of cultures we just don't understand, even in our game. So it's like, we go to a city and we do something we're just so used to doing, and it turns out it's like a crime. Like, say, yeah. But I mean, that's kind of how it works. I mean, we were the victim of, such a circumstance by going into this town and not taking the opportunity to explore the surroundings or even ask anyone, other than the fact that we know it was a seedy place. So we had all the information present to us, but we just, yeah. So, but yeah, that is a good point. It's kind of introduces like new societies and how they do things.
Yeah, that's a good point. Since, now that you talked about this, I'm realizing that a beach episode or a downtime episode is also a great opportunity for world building and for lore dumping and all the fun stuff you can't always do when you're battling mutated drow. Awesome. So I think we had time for one more question for the end of the episode. Sad. So what are like some ideas, just like for people who are listening, for like fun or unique beach episodes? Obviously classics, festival, actual beach, bathhouse, random bar. What are like some more unique settings for these downtime episodes?
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I really liked the whole hunting bit when we helped out the town where we kind of like divulged,
get more information, but it's still downtime. Yeah.
We went fishing, we went hunting, we helped out because it feels like we're getting an opportunity to know the character as well as help the people and earn trust. I think those are some of the best downtimes.
Yeah, like you can do so many different. I don't want to give too many away because then it's like, oh,
then you can't use them.
But I mean, like for instance, traveling through a forest, they come upon a grove with a really beautiful pond and animals grazing at it, and it gives them a moment of introspection and a chance to kind of like appreciate the beauty around them. Coming upon an oasis in a desert where they've been traveling and everything has been so hard, and this gives them a moment to just realize that there are spots of hope even in the most desolate places. Coming upon a ruin. And not necessarily a ruin that's like haunted or dangerous or something like that. Could just be a ruined piece of society that has been lost to time, and it gives them a moment to try and understand what civilization or what happened here, and chat about it and get to know the characters and what they're interested in. There are like so many different things, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like I'm building this entire session around this thing. Often the players will do that for you. Like you'll be like, oh, I'm just going to have this side thing that they won't really even care about. I'm going to have this gigantic old tree be in the center of this forest, and they're going to come upon it, and it's just going to be really, really strange. And then the players will take it for like 2 hours trying to figure out like, how the fuck did this thing get here? Like what lives in it? What creatures call it home? Like what kind of leaves does it bloom? Does it have any special like ecosystem around it? All of this stuff. And they'll run with it more so than you having to do much of anything. So that's generally what I try to do, is I try to find like these small things that will pique someone's interest. And it often does. Like, it's like, hey, you hear about this thing. And it's like against a player's nature, just be like, yeah, that doesn't make sense. Like, why would the DM just told me that for no reason, though. They're like, no matter what, they're like, this has to be something important, whether it is or isn't, but it often gives them like a fun little chase. And at the end of it, they learn something, whether it be something in the plot, whether it be getting something out of it, or whether it just be learning something about who their character is and who they've built them in this world. So I think it tends to work out.
Fun. They spend the session climbing the giant tree and find like pixies or something in the branches. Fun time. Okay, so that is going to be our time for tonight. We have one more minute. That's not enough time for questions. So we're ending 50 seconds early. Thank you guys for being on the show. Thank you to everyone who's watching, who tunes in week after week to watch us talk about D&D, weird
nerdy
shit.
stuff.
Yeah. Weird, strange, dirty
Can I just
stuff.
say, my boss noticed my jacket, and my boss is like a director of engineering, by the way. So it's like, he's like not like a low end manager. Anyway, he was like, oh yeah, like nice Letterman jacket. And I was like, yeah, it's from this like nerdy RPG show that I watch. He's like, Critical Role. And I was like, what? I was like, what are you talking? You know Critical Role? And then he started getting into D&D. He was like, yeah, my original DM like moved to Seattle, and then all my friends split up, and he's like, I can't play anymore. And I was like, oh, I'm going to talk.
The game that brings people together.
I'm finding a way. I'm going to find a way to talk to him, and I might make him watch the stream at one point. So,
ooh,
I've tossed the stream around my coworkers as well.
Because one of my coworkers found this stream.
That's awesome. Yeah. But
they were stalking me online.
Jake, I almost want to invite him to play, maybe as a guest on it.
That'd be fun.
That would actually be really fun and a good topic to approach at another time. Guest players.
Yeah, there you go.
Guest players. Good idea.
Anyway, okay, I just wanted to call that
out. Who did I thank already? Okay, thank you. Thank the guests, the future guests. Thanks to the audience. Thank you to Lady Meows and Sunbird who did our logo and our theme music, both of which are beautiful. Tune in again next week to see what we're going to talk about, maybe guests, maybe something else. And tune in on Friday to see what happens next now that the characters are out of that cave and ready to move on. Thank you and good night.
Have fun.
See y'all later. Thanks for watching.